Welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to try another pens in use overview. And I'd like to say that these are my only 15 pens in use, but that would not be an accurate statement. This is about half the pens I have inked up, maybe less than half. These pens I picked out for particular reasons, nibs, inks, the fact that I use them a lot when I write letters, so that's how I categorize their place in this list of 15. And the last time I did this list on Chinese pens, there was a lot of confusion over what pen was which, so this time we're going to try to rectify that by providing you a list. And we'll have this in the description. So there's 15 of them here. Here's the list of the 15 in the numerical order with the inks that they have. So we have the Wingsung 618, and it's here. It's the black version. The pen has a interesting story behind it. Number one, I just think it's classic. I mean, it's a beautiful design, very functional. I like this big cap band here at the bottom of the cap. You know, nice clear gold finial. When I first got this pen, I inked it up. I wrote with it. I really liked it. It has Noodlers, Blue Upon the Plains of Abraham, an ink that one of my pen viewers sent me, only released in Canada. And I really like the ink. It's a really nice permanent ink. You know, kind of that blue, gray, black type of color. But when I first started using this pen day to day, it would leak a lot of ink and this section would be covered with ink. So since I really like the pen, I just tore it completely apart. That's easy to do. You know, you can easily unscrew that piston assembly, take off this section, unscrew the section. I cleaned everything, silicone greased everything, put it back together again, and it has not leaked since. So this writes first time every time. The only one thing that I think is a little bit different is that first turn to unscrew this cap takes a little bit of effort. That might be one of the reasons why this also is sealed up well and writes first time every time. So this is my original Leica pen, which I've loved, and this was in the other review of the 15 Chinese pens. This is the one that has the 2 turns to take the cap off. And I've gotten 3 other ones since then, and all of those 3 require the 7 turns, and we'll look at that version in a little bit later. I replaced the nib with this beautiful Knox nib. This is just an oblique double broad that's been ground to somewhat of a left oblique by Mike, my favorite pen grinder. You know, I really like the clear feed. You know, this has that glitter ink in it, the PENBBS June Pearl ink. Again, an everyday writer, writes first time every time, very consistent. And that's one of the things that all of the pens in this group have in common. So here's another Leica. And as we watch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 turns to get it apart. And I have to admit that that bothers me. As much as I love the pen, and this, I've also replaced this ink with, this nib, I replaced this nib with the 1.1. And I got a number of these 1.1 Chinese nibs. And when we get into writing, we'll talk a little bit about my feelings on those. But this has the PENBBS. I called it glitter purple. There's also, if you look at the description, it's a star ink. There's some discussions that could have gold flakes in it, which I kind of doubt, but whatever it is, I really like the ink in it, and it writes well. So staying on that theme of clear eyedropper pens, we have the Moonman Model M2, which I called this Leica version 2. Again, really clear acrylic, really well made. You know, the red band has its pluses and minuses. In the beginning, I just liked the simple design of the Leica better. And that's just a personal preference, which I totally understand. It's beautiful to see the ink in these pens. You know, this one has the Oster Jade in it, which is one of my favorite green inks. Again, this has a solid black feed in it, like the other original, like it had a clear feed, you know, different shape section here. And this one also has a 1.1 Chinese stub in it, because when it had the original nib in it, which was fine, and with that really lay down more ink. So this pen might be a surprise in this group. This is the Seung 7363, which pretty much has a 308 kind of resemblance to it. As you can see, I've used this quite a bit. There's not much ink. And I do reprime it, and I do bring that piston down. Now this has another interesting nib in it. It has a 1.1 Lamy stub. This also has a black feed in it, nice clear section, and this doesn't have any facets in it, so you can hold it anywhere. It's a light pen. You know, it has that, you know, 599 style clip. And it has a Oster Velvet Storm in it, which is really a nice ink. So this is also kind of a surprise in this group. And it's mainly here for a couple of reasons. One, this pen has grown on me. This is the Seung B698, as Bobby refers to it as. So one of its advantages is a pull-off cap. So that's really easy and quick. It has a nice O-ring here. This has more of the Lamy style section, which I'm not a real fan of. I don't need those facets in there, and it makes the section feel even thinner than it is. And this has a 1.5 Lamy nib in it. And this is interesting to compare these to the Chinese ones, and that's one reason why it's here. But this writes very well, and it has Rohrer and Klingner Salix ink in it, which is an iron gall ink, and it works fine. Clear feed. Nice Lamy style wire clip. Now for something completely different. Vintage. Watermans 55. And this is here for a completely different reason. Well, no, it's here for the same reason, but in a completely different style. This has an account nib in it, which was what Waterman did when they wanted an extra fine nib. So you have accountants writing in ledgers, probably had small spaces to put, and this thing writes really fine, consistently, writes first time every time. I mean, for a pen that's could be 100 years old, I'm just very much impressed with it. And as you can see, it has three different places where the cap engages with the sections, so you can get it almost line up with the lever. Now for something completely different. This is the Esterbrook J. All these pens have been in videos to various degrees, and in my description I'll link to those videos. But what makes this one great, besides the nice brown kind of root beer color plastic, and again, I don't think anybody actually knows exactly what this is. It could be a celluloid or it could be something else. These pens were considered lower end pens, but I've replaced the original nib with an Osmiroid nib, and this is that B3, which is the smaller of the music nibs. They also make a B4, which is even wider than this, almost close to like 2 millimeters. This one's about a 1.5, I would say. It writes very well, and it has Oster Caffe Crema ink in it, which I think is appropriate for that pen. I love my PENBBS pens. This is one of the first ones I got. Well, the second one I got. We'll look at the first one in a little bit. You know, interesting design, no clip. Again, a minimalistic design, which I can really appreciate. You know, it shows off the shape. It shows off the acrylic well. You know, the section matches the acrylic, and this has the original PENBBS nib in it. I have no desire to change this one out. The original nibs write very, very well. Smooth, wet, consistent. You uncap them, they write first time every time. And this has in it, checking with my notes, Oster $10 green, which is really a nice green. It's part of the art ink collection. And I think this is my first PENBBS pen, Sky Blue, or many other names, Sky Swirl Blue or whatever. Again, a beautiful acrylic, beautiful simplistic design, the same 323 design as the other pen. But what makes this one a little bit different is I've replaced that nib with just an OBB nib. So this has not been ground. It fits very well. These are all the PENBBS pens take a number 6 nib. It's very easy to pull it out and put it back in again. Some people have complained about the maybe distorting these fins on the feed, but if you grip it this way on the side of the nib, I found it's much easier to pull out than trying to grip it this way. So, and of course, if you just grip it and turn in this direction, it will unscrew the assembly, and you can easily swap nibs from pen to pen once they're in there. And you can smell the acrylic. This pen is many months old, and that acrylic smell is still fairly strong. And that has in it Frankly Blue from Robert Oster. And now for something completely different. I fell in love with this pen. I still love it. I mean, it's, again, simplistic design. You may see a theme here among the pens that I'm having in this group. Just works great. I mean, if you want a pocket pen, you don't want it that large. I mean, the Leica pens could be pocket pens, but this one is certainly more appropriate. The cap, you know, securely screws onto the back. It's just a few turns to get that done. Fits well in the hand. It feels good. I left the original nib on this because it writes well. No need to swap it out. And to me, with a pocket pen, you're probably going to be writing on a whole bunch of different types of paper. So a finer nib with less flow will work better on different types of paper, especially cheaper paper that is more absorbent with ink. So this pen is here because it has a completely different nib on it. This is a Knox Galileo. Oh, in the Miniman pen is Iroshizuku shin-ryoku, which is a nice green. So this one, before we keep going, has a Birmingham Waterfront Dusk in it. So this is a Knox pen with a Knox nib, Knox feed, and I've just been impressed and blown away. Just a simple pull-off cap, you know, your classic rhodium, silver, and black. A little bit small section, but very comfortable. And this has just a straight OBB nib by Knox, and this has phenomenal flow, incredibly wet. A little bit of a baby's bottom, which I'm going to work on, and I may do that before we do the writing samples. Nice secure click. And for the price of this pen from Birmingham Pens, it's the price of the nib, so that's beautiful, and it comes with a large selection of nibs. Sometimes they're out of stock, but just keep watching, or have Nick send you an update when he gets it. So going back to vintage, this is a Waterman Z W5. Crema just did a W2 video, which I enjoyed watching. W2 is a slightly smaller pen than this one. I think it just has that one band here at the bottom of the cap. So the W5, I think, was probably the upscale version of that pen. You know, it's a 1950s pen from the UK, and I've just been blown away by all of them. They have phenomenal nibs, and this is no exception. You know, smooth, great line variation, a little bit of a stub quality to them. I've got them on my Conway Stewarts, my Parkers. And this is my first Waterman from the 50s that was made in Great Britain or England. And this I have filled with Krishna Winter Blue, which is a phenomenal blue. I always usually use that pen in any letters that I write just because the blue just pops so much. So PENBBS can't be underrepresented here in this group. I do have many more of them inked up, and some of them in very spectacular acrylics, but this is one of the earlier ones that I got, and it's been a consistent daily writer for me. You know, this is that 308 model. I just think it's a classic design. Nice cap band here that protects the bottom of the cap. You know, classic unscrew. This one I also left the original PENBBS nib in because it writes well. And this one has Noodlers burgundy ink in it, which has just really surprised me. It's an ink I've had for a number of years, and for some reason it never really made a daily rotation, but now I have, it's my go-to red. And last but not least is a Hero 330. So those of you that saw this video, I mean, I just love writing with this. It's been refilled a number of times. That aromatic filler doesn't hold a lot of ink, but the ink in here is Krishna Jungle Volcano, and that bent nib just lays down a great amount of ink. And you can get some line variation by varying the angle that you're against the paper. It writes extra fine in reverse, so This has been a pretty nice pen, even though, you know, it's definitely on the cheap side. I think it's under $3 or around $3. So, but, you know, I would definitely get it with the bent nib, sometimes called the calligraphy nib. So that's it. So those are the pens. And then we're just going to do a quick writing sample. You know, I think that's also nice. And I'll talk about the nibs and the inks that I have in these pens and why I enjoy that combination. So one of the other things is this is that dark Orchid ink that's in the Waterman 55, and apparently these bottles are no longer available. I did do a check and I don't find them anymore. So they're only available in the smaller bottles, which I think is the price per milliliter is a lot higher in the smaller bottles. But I bought 6 of these right away when they were available, and I'm very happy with them. And as you can see, I've used quite a bit of it and also given a lot of ink away. So these pens are there because I enjoy writing with them. And this is consistent, writes first time every time, never any ink starvation. It's just a great writer. And, you know, I have this bulletproof ink in it from Noodlers, so I do write checks, and I keep this by my checkbook. And also it's great for jotting down quick notes because it's always consistent. It works well in any type of paper. So it's a lot of discussion about hooded nibs, and this is about as good as I've ever had in a hooded nib, and I have a number of Parker 51s. I do enjoy the Parker 45 better, and hopefully I'll get that video out sometime in the future, but I have a lot of pens, and it's just something that requires to me a lot of focus and concentration to do the right video. So this is a great nib. I mean, you're not going to get line variation out of it, you know, but what do you want a pen for? You want it to write. You want it to write consistently. You want it to write all the time. And this has a large ink supply in it. I mean, I can keep this for a couple months, and it's going to always be a very rewarding writer. But when you want something with a little bit of variation, I certainly do have a number of nibs that have some great variation in it. I mean, this you have to be careful about what angle you put on a piece of paper, but it rewards you with some nice line variation. It looks great in a letter. This ink and the sparkle in it, I never thought I would be enjoying glitter ink, but I do enjoy this PENBBS glitter ink. It's something that, again, you get surprised sometimes, but it's good to try something that you may not think that you would enjoy. So here's the other Leica that has that amazing amount of turns to get it off. But I still enjoy the pen. So I have a number of these Chinese stub nibs. They go from 1.1 to 2.9, and 2.9 is huge. They're all extremely smooth, and some of them I needed to do just a little bit of work to get the flow just right, and usually the work just had to do with a little bit of smoothing, but that's a large area at the end of that nib, and it needs to really be perfectly aligned, perfectly smooth. But it rewards you with a beautiful line, I think. Camera's focusing pretty quick now. I mean, that's just nice. And you know, it's a nice purplish ink with a little bit of character to it. So unfortunately, that Leica model that we just saw is not available anymore. It's been out of production for a while, and you may eventually occasionally see some inventory show up, but this is the new replacement model, which I think is good. And I have that same 1.1 stub nib in it. We'll hopefully get it to focus. So hopefully one thing that's coming across in the video is how smooth these nibs are. Lays down a nice line. Don't require any pressure. Just a joy to write with. And this Jade ink doesn't shade as much as it used to. And maybe it sat in this pen for about a month now. But, you know, I think maybe in the bottle, whatever that shading element was may have evaporated or whatever. But I still enjoy that green color. And I have my Sublime ink if I want some incredible amount of shading. And I may mix those two together and see what I can get. So now for something slightly different. This is the Lamy 1.1. And I don't know whether this is an official Lamy or not. I bought it on eBay and the price was fairly inexpensive. But right away you can hear the difference. This is a sharper stub. And I enjoy this in its own way. It says that Robert Oster Velvet Storm in it. So to choose between the 1.1 Chinese and the 1.1 Lamy is really something that as a writer you're going to have to determine, you know, just like the ground oblique double broad that I had, you know, it's somewhat of an acquired taste, and sometimes I enjoy the challenge of maintaining the right angle but rewarded with more line variation and a crisper line. So this has the 1.5 millimeter Lamy labeled nib. And as you can see, this is a much, much broader line. I mean, you know, there's like 40% difference between these two. I mean, the horizontal are still pretty clean, but those vertical lines are definitely, to me, much wider than the 1.1. I mean, it's hard for me to explain why. I can just show you, and hopefully that helps explain it. We have some sun coming out. And I have to make certain I say 1.5, not 1.1. So I don't know, I think this is a great combination with the Salix ink. You know, it's kind of a purple, but you know, just kind of the right shade of purple that I think works well for me. And obviously you need to be careful with angle here in order to get a consistent flow of ink. Now we go from a 1.5 to an extra, extra fine. I think you can hear that a little bit more on the paper, but it's an extra fine nib, and you know, so the pressure that you're putting on the nib to write with, which is less than you'd put on the 1.1 or 1.5, is still going to have more actual pressure per square millimeter than the larger nib. But this just writes first time all the time, and this dark Orchid ink works much better in this pen than I would have ever expected. You know, if I need a really nice fine line, I definitely gravitate towards this pen, and I've never been disappointed. Considering the age of the pen, I'm very impressed with its writing ability. And now to something completely different. So I mean, this just works extremely well. I mean, I have an Osmiroid 65, which is sack lever fill and a 75, which is a piston fill. And I'm not happy with those two pens with these nibs in it, but in this Esterbrook and the other Esterbrooks that I put these Osmiroid nibs in, I'm just extremely happy with their performance. And this Caffe Crema ink works very, very well in a whole number of levels. So this is one of those examples of creatively thinking about what you have and using it for the maximum effect. So this is another pen that I just like the way this green ink works in the pen. This is that $10 Robert Oster $10 green. So, and this is a standard nib, which is smooth. And the other thing that I found about all of these PENBBS is they write first time, they write consistently, they don't require any pressure. So for that reason, I just enjoy them. And we could have probably made all these 15 pens, PENBBS pens, but you know, I like variety, and I'm certain as you do, we all like variety. So I like putting different nibs in the pens. So this one now is a much broader nib. And this is even smoother. This is about as smooth as any nib that I've ever used. That's a really nice, intense line. Robert Oster Frankly Blue. You know, horizontal and vertical are a little different, but not a lot. You can squeeze out a little bit, and also this is an oblique double broad, so it has some line variation due to the nature of the grind. But this is a great combo on many levels. And again, I enjoy putting different nibs into pens and seeing how they write, seeing how the feed works, seeing how the different inks work with them. So we're going to the Moonman Mini. And again, this is another one of those smooth every time, no pressure. And it's a great pocket pen, everyday pen. You know, I don't know, again, and it looks great in the hand. It looks great in the pocket. So this is the Knox Galileo with the OBB nib. Now this requires pressure. That's why you see a little bit of a hard start there, but you know, I've done some smoothing. I don't think it's baby's bottom, but once you get that ink flow, it just gushes. So this is interesting. I mean, I have probably 4 of these nibs, and this is the only one that works this way. So it's wetter than any of the other versions of this nib, but it also requires pressure and is more sensitive to angle. So that goes to show you that there is some variation even in German nibs and things of that nature. So the key thing is to find out what you like and hopefully find a nib that fits. So moving on back to vintage. This is the Watermans W5. Now this is a soft nib, but really doesn't have much line variation to it with a flex. But it feels great. And it's as smooth as anything I have. It's also somewhat sensitive to angle because it does have a little bit of a stub quality to it. And this Winter's Blue is just a beautiful blue. Looks great when you put it into a letter. Going back to PENBBS with the standard nib. I like combining these two because of the extreme color variation between the two inks. And again, consistent, everyday writer, and I really have to appreciate PENBBS for giving us this great selection and variety of pens that are just a joy to write with, and you can also change nibs because it's a standard number 6, so that makes it great. So last but not least, we have our hero, 330, with a bent nib. Could be called Fude, but you know, again, that's just neither here nor there, just a matter of nomenclature, but it's how it writes, which is phenomenal. So you can get an extra fine if you reverse it. If you go more vertical, you can get like a medium line. But I mean, this thing can be really, really wet and really, really broad. And this Jungle Volcano is certainly a nice ink to lay down in that way. So that's it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little run through of these pens and inks and nibs, and hopefully it's giving you some different aspects of this great hobby that we're in. So thank you for watching. This is the end now. May you have many, many great writing experiences and have an opportunity to explore this amazing world that we're in with fountain pens as a particular subject of choice, but just have fun, enjoy it, use these to put ink on paper and see what happens. So until we meet again, bye for now. Have a good day.